What's going on, guys? Norm here. We're in the lab. So what we want to do today is we want to do shrimp ramen. So this is how I do it, which I'd like to share with you guys. So first thing I did was I started boiling some water, and what we're going to do to get started, I cut up some onions. We have minced garlic, and what I did is bought some carrot sticks from just Sobeys. So because I like the carrot stick texture, and I find I don't want to do all that chopping, so I add some of those in raw at the end. But it's, instead of using whole carrots, whatever, we can just use the sticks for this purpose. So what I like to do is I like to get started with those to get a broth going, and then at the same time I get the shrimp that I bought. Now I buy frozen usually, because unless you get it directly from like the fishmonger, it's usually sitting in the store for, you know, a couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever, and the transport and all that. So buying frozen, they usually flash freeze it as soon as you buy it, which is, you know, you're gonna get a better product most of the time when you're buying a frozen shrimp. So I tend to do that. So I add these in. They have the shell on, and it's important for them to have the shell on because that gives this broth a ton of flavor. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add those in. And then what I also have is I've halved some jalapeno peppers. Now, what I'm doing with the jalapeno peppers is I'm going to do the same thing with the carrot sticks later. But what I also like to do is I like to scrape out the seeds and veins, because that's where all the heat is. So if you're just chewing on a jalapeno pepper, you're not going to get a whole lot of heat. All of it's in this white like seed vein area. So that's where all the heat comes from. So what I'm doing is I'm putting that in this broth that we're starting as well, so that it gives it some heat, because I like it hot. If you don't add this, and don't add the jalapenos afterwards. Use a green pepper. It's going to work way better for you if you just don't like heat. So I'm going to scrape these guys in, and then what I'm going to do after that, put it back on to boil to get that shrimp cooked. Once we get the shrimp cooked, I'll come back and then we'll get to the next step. All right, guys. Shrimp's cooked, so what we're going to do now, add a little tiny bit of soy sauce to the broth that we're making, because we want some salt in it. And instead of just using regular salt, I like to use soy sauce for it. I find it's better flavor for when you're cooking like an Asian style dish like this. And also I'm going to give it a couple shots of fish sauce. Not much, just a couple drops, just to give it a little tiny bit more flavor. Now what we did, I took all the shrimp out, still in the shell. So now what we have to do is we have to get them out of the shell, and then we're going to get the shells back into this, and we're going to let that reduce down so it takes on a lot more of that shrimp flavor. So that's going to take me a little while. So once we get that done, I'm going to get that back onto the stove, and that's going to simmer really low for probably about an hour or two. Now usually what I do is I start this in the morning when I'm working, because I work from home. Now I'll get it all ready at this point before 9 o'clock. Then when lunchtime comes, it's ready to go in like 5 minutes. But it's Sunday, so I'm gonna have to find some other stuff to do. So I'm gonna start peeling these guys and getting everything back in and on the stove, and then I'll come back to you guys in a couple of hours and we'll have everything good to go. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Kind of hot. Kind of hot. Yeah. All right. Fuck these guys. All right, guys, we had an eventful day, but we're back in the lab now and we're ready to finish up. So it's been a couple of hours. The shrimp stock is finished up. So it still has all that stuff in it that we got to get out. So like the shells, the carrot, the onion, and the garlic that we're not transferring that over. So what we want to do is we just want to strain that out, and I'm going to switch over to a different pot. Because this reduced and the liquid went down a lot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a smaller pot that is more narrow, and then that'll make the liquid higher so that it gives us enough room to boil our noodles in it. So all I'm doing is taking one pot with a strainer, dumping the stuff in. So now we have this smaller pot full of stock. I'm not going to walk it over there and try to tilt it up and show you because then it'll spill everywhere. We're going to hit this on high heat and get that boiling. Once that's boiling, then we finish up and we're ready to go. Alright guys, so any good ramen usually has a nice soft boiled egg in it. So I'm going to fire that in now that we got the broth boiling in. The key, drop it in nice and slow. I use a spoon, lower it down, then 6 minutes. 6 minute egg is the perfect soft boiled egg for ramen. So I'm going to hit that up right now. I'll see you in 6 minutes. Alright guys, so what I did is the 6 minutes are up. I took the egg out, I put a bowl of cold water next to the stove, and I took it out and put it in that instantly so that it stops cooking. And then that way we'll get that exact consistency that we want. And now what we want to do is put the noodles on and we're going to eat in a couple minutes. So I like to buy these, you can get whatever kind of noodles, if you can do fresh, do it. But I like to buy these instant noodles that I found at Sobeys. They just have a picture of a rooster on them and say instant noodle. I love them. They come in like little pucks and they cook up in probably about 5 minutes. This isn't an open pack. I have 2 pucks left from the last batch that I did. I'm going to use those. That's going to cook up, probably take about, I don't know, 5-6 minutes or so. There are like instructions on the pack, but I mean, I don't always follow that because I like mine a little bit softer than the normal person, I guess. So I'll get that going and we'll see you in a couple minutes. Alright guys, while those noodles are finishing up, one last thing we need to do. So I have the shrimp that I peeled earlier. What I did is I sliced up all those jalapenos that I had, some onions, and I took those carrot matchsticks. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that into our bowl that we're using. And then because the broth is hot enough for me, what I want to do is just hit it with the last little tiny thing. I like to use a little tiny bit of seafood sauce at the end, so it's basically like a tomato-based horseradish sauce. So I have one ready, which is the Maritime Madness Heavenly Horseradish Seafood Sauce. So I really like this one, so I like to give that a nice little shot to finish it off with. And then what I'm going to do is as soon as those noodles come out, we're going to get that over this, then finish with the egg. We're laughing. Alright guys, we're in the end game now. So everything is done. The noodles are boiled. We got our little finishing touches here, so let's do it. So you can see the amount that everything reduced. It kind of, actually maybe you can't see, but what it did is everything reduced down. It's just a little bit of broth left with the noodles, so they took on that flavor. Everything in there smells super good, looks super good. We got the bowl with all of our vegetables that we cooked, the onions, the jalapeno peppers, the carrot sticks, we got the shrimp in there, the horseradish sauce that we had. We're gonna get this in here. What that's gonna do is that's gonna bring all that stuff up to temperature and maybe cool down this steaming hot broth a little bit. Then we're going to finish it up. fries. It smells unreal. Like, it's gonna be so good. So the last thing we're gonna do is we are gonna hit it with what I did is I chopped up a little tiny bit of cashews. I like a little tiny bit of crunch in mine. So we'll put that in, and then a little tiny bit of fresh cilantro here, just because I like that little bit of freshness in it at the end as well. And the last thing that we have to do is get that perfect 6-minute egg in. So I sat that in the cold water, left it for about, well, probably 5-6 minutes, deshelled it, and then I have it sitting here. You can just cut that open and you'll see how perfect that is inside. Just drop that in. I probably wouldn't make such a mess if I wasn't trying to show everybody. And then give that about a minute to sit so it cools down. Then just drive it into you. I'll be back in a minute, boys. Would you look at that? Just look at it. Would you look at that? 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 Alright guys, now that we're done waiting, mix that up a little tiny bit again. I like to get the eggs under so that we get some of that fatty yolk in there with the rest of it, because the shrimp is really lean. There's really no, amino acids or anything in this. So just dunk it down. Now it's time to taste it, and I usually use like chopsticks, but I broke mine right before I started this because I'm an absolute creature, and I'm using a fork. So let's see how she is. Yes! That's what I'm talking about. Right there. Right there. That was worth it. The 3 hours on the stove or whatever it was, all the work that went into it. It's actually not a lot of work. Just time consuming. Waiting. Whatever. This is delicious. I love it. Try this. Get after it. See you next time, boys. Oh! Before I go, huge thank you to Big Spruce for giving me this t-shirt. I appreciate all the support you guys have given me over the last, I don't know, what has it been, a year or so. You guys have been really, really, really great to me, and I love the fact that you guys are helping me along this journey, and thank you so much. Peace out.